Mechanically, 100%. So bodies, I like it.
Yeah.
I've just got too many little things sitting around. We're not using them, driving them. So
Picture a rusted-out military truck sitting in a muddy government auction lot. Most dealers walk right past it. One man in rural Indiana walks straight toward it, climbs inside, and sees a business empire nobody else could imagine. That decision would eventually turn a small-town equipment yard into one of the most trusted names in the industry, and it all started with machines everyone else had already written off. Across the United States, the heavy equipment business has long been dominated by massive dealership networks representing household names. Success in that world usually means selling the newest models, backed by financing plans, factory warranties, and dealer service contracts. Bigger inventory, bigger showrooms, bigger loans. That is the formula most equipment dealers have followed for decades. But down a quiet stretch of road in southern Indiana, far from any corporate headquarters, a man named Clinton Chitwood decided to build something different. His company, CNC Equipment, would eventually challenge almost everything the industry assumed about what equipment buyers actually wanted. To understand why that decision mattered, you have to go back to where Clinton grew up. Raised in Monroe County, Indiana, on land that had been in his family for generations, he spent his childhood surrounded by excavators, dozers, and aging farm machinery. His father worked in excavating, so heavy equipment was never a novelty in his world. It was simply part of daily life. Growing up that way shaped how he thought about machines. To him, they weren't disposable products meant to be traded in every few years. They were tools. Tools that earned their keep through hard use, patient repair, and a mechanic willing to keep them alive long after a dealership would have called them junk. That mindset would eventually put him completely out of step with where the rest of the industry was heading. Clinton started CNC Equipment with almost nothing behind it. No investors, no corporate backing, no grand plan to build a national chain. In the beginning, the business looked like hundreds of other small equipment yards scattered across the rural Midwest. Buy used construction equipment, fix what needed fixing, sell it to contractors, farmers, and local businesses who needed a machine that worked without a six-figure price tag. There was nothing flashy about it. If things had gone the way most small equipment businesses go, CNC might have stayed a modest regional operation known only to the handful of customers within driving distance. Then Clinton made a choice that a lot of people in the business would have called risky, maybe even reckless. He started buying decommissioned military surplus vehicles. These weren't your average used work trucks rolling off a construction site. They were former United States military vehicles, machines that had spent years, sometimes decades, in service with the Army, the Marine Corps, or the National Guard before being retired and declared surplus. Under the government's disposal process, that equipment first gets offered to other federal agencies, then to state and local governments, and only after that does it become available to the public through surplus auctions. By the time a civilian buyer got their hands on one, it usually carried a long history. Thousands of miles, years of hard use, and paperwork that ranged from thoroughly documented to almost non-existent. The variety coming through those auctions was staggering. One sale might have a classic deuce-and-a-half cargo truck, a rugged workhorse that had been hauling gear for the military since the early 1950s. The next might bring in a heavier 5-ton hauler, a Humvee from the 1980s, engineering equipment, generators, forklifts, or specialized recovery trucks built to drag disabled vehicles out of impossible terrain. Some of these machines never left American soil, spending their entire service life on domestic bases. Others had been overseas and back. Ages varied wildly too because the military doesn't retire equipment on a fixed schedule. If a machine could still pass inspection and keep running, it stayed in service sometimes for 30 or 40 years. That created a strange contradiction that most casual buyers never noticed. On the outside, a lot of these trucks looked beaten up. Faded paint, dented panels, worn-out interiors. But underneath that rough exterior often sat a drivetrain built to survive conditions most commercial trucks were never designed for. Military specifications demand equipment that keeps running in deserts, in freezing mountain passes, in deep mud, in places where a breakdown isn't just inconvenient, it's dangerous. That meant heavy frames, simple mechanical systems, generous ground clearance, and parts designed to be swapped and repaired in the field rather than sent back to a factory. Of course, those same qualities made the trucks a hard sell to the average buyer. They were slow. They weren't comfortable. Plenty of them weren't even built with civilian roads in mind, and getting one road legal took real knowledge. That is exactly the gap Clinton decided to step into. He looked at these unwanted machines and saw something almost nobody else in the equipment business was willing to see. With the right mechanical skill, the right fabrication work, and enough patience, these overlooked trucks could become dependable, capable civilian workhorses. Because of their simple engineering, they could keep running in remote places where a modern, computer-controlled machine would be completely stuck the moment something failed. Instead of just cleaning up these trucks and reselling them as is, CNC started rebuilding them from the ground up. Crew cab conversions to add seating. Upgraded suspension systems for a smoother ride. Custom steering setups. Careful mechanical restoration from the frame out. A lot of that fabrication work happened right there in the shop, because Clinton quickly learned that a lot of the problems he ran into couldn't be solved by flipping through a parts catalog. Every finished build added to a growing reputation. CNC was the shop willing to take on projects other dealers wouldn't even attempt. Looking back now, it's easy to assume this was an obvious opportunity. It wasn't. At the exact same time Clinton was doubling down on old military trucks, the rest of the heavy equipment industry was racing in the opposite direction, toward machines loaded with electronics, emission systems, and proprietary software. Big manufacturers were pouring billions into new technology, while independent dealers chased late-model inventory backed by financing deals. Clinton went the other way entirely. Whether it came from instinct or simple experience, he understood something a lot of people in the business had missed. For customers working far from a dealership, in places where a sophisticated repair shop might be hours or days away, simplicity could be worth more than the newest technology on the market. That single idea became the foundation for everything CNC would eventually build. Most salesmen build a career convincing people to buy. Clinton built his by telling people when not to. In October of 2012, CNC Equipment uploaded its first video to YouTube. There was no production crew, no scripted pitch, no polished marketing plan behind it. Clinton just pointed a camera at the work already happening in his shop. While most equipment dealers were still leaning on glossy brochures and staged advertisements, he did the opposite. He showed viewers the machines exactly as they arrived. Rust, dents, leaks, broken parts and all. Instead of short, flashy clips, a lot of his videos ran 40 minutes or longer. Viewers followed him through muddy auction lots, climbed inside neglected dozers with him, crawled under excavators with thousands of hours on the clock, and watched engines get taken apart piece by piece. What made those videos different was the honesty behind them. Every inspection played out more like an investigation than a sales pitch. A fresh coat of paint hiding rust underneath. Excessive play in a bucket pin. A hydraulic cylinder slowly weeping oil. A weld that didn't quite match the rest of the frame. To an experienced eye, these were the details that separated a smart purchase from a financial disaster, and Clinton pointed every single one of them out on camera, even when it meant walking away from a machine he could have sold. He wasn't trying to convince viewers that everything in his yard was a bargain. He was teaching them how to evaluate equipment the way a professional would. And that philosophy didn't change even when CNC had inventory sitting right there ready to sell. If the numbers didn't add up, his advice stayed the same: walk away. That same honesty carried over into a much bigger problem hitting the industry. As online equipment marketplaces grew through the 2010s, so did fraud. Scammers built convincing fake dealer websites, stole photos from legitimate auction listings, and advertised machines that never existed. Buyers, sometimes located far from the seller, would wire deposits and then discover there was nothing on the other end. Losses climbed into the tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars for some victims, and industry groups repeatedly warned buyers about the growing scale of the problem. Clinton took that fight public. He made videos breaking down fake dealer sites, suspicious pricing, stolen photos, and fabricated inspection reports, showing viewers exactly how to spot the warning signs before wiring a single dollar. He encouraged people to verify physical addresses, ask for serial numbers, and confirm ownership independently. In an ironic twist, by teaching his audience how to spot dishonest dealers, he also made it that much easier for them to evaluate honest ones, including his own company. What's remarkable is how little of CNC's growth depended on traditional marketing. The videos never followed the usual playbook of exaggerated reactions, manufactured drama, or promises that every machine was some incredible hidden gem. People kept coming back because they trusted what they were seeing, even when the truth wasn't flattering to the seller. At a time when a lot of manufacturing had shifted overseas and modern machines were becoming harder for owners to fix themselves, CNC leaned hard into rebuilding what already existed instead of chasing what was new. That idea sounds simple on paper, but it went directly against decades of momentum in the heavy equipment world. Starting in the late 1990s and picking up speed through the 2000s, manufacturers invested heavily in cleaner engines, onboard computers, and complex emissions systems built to meet tightening environmental standards. Machines got quieter and more efficient, But they also got a lot more complicated, to the point where fixing a serious issue often meant calling in the manufacturer directly. CNC came at the problem from a completely different angle. Why replace a machine when it can be rebuilt? Equipment arrives at the Indiana shop from auctions, retired construction fleets, government surplus sales, and private sellers. From there it gets torn down, inspected, repaired, modified, and upgraded all under one roof. Welding, fabrication, machining, hydraulic work, and custom steel fabrication are all part of the process. And Clinton treats every project as its own engineering puzzle rather than running machines through some standard assembly line. One of the most valuable tools in the shop isn't a giant excavator, it's a CNC plasma cutting table, capable of producing precise steel parts straight from raw plate. Paired with the shop's welding and fabrication equipment, that lets the team build brackets, structural reinforcements, and replacement parts that might not exist commercially anymore, which matters enormously when you're working on decades-old military trucks or discontinued equipment where original parts are scarce or absurdly expensive. That philosophy shows up most clearly in the military truck build CNC became known for. Old Army cargo trucks that once hauled supplies across rough terrain get transformed into practical civilian work vehicles. Crew cab conversions add seating. Air ride suspension improves comfort on long drives. Custom steering setups make the trucks easier to handle. None of these upgrades came off a factory option sheet. Every one of them was engineered in-house through measuring, cutting, welding, and plenty of trial and error. The finished trucks keep the rugged durability that made them valuable to the military in the first place, while becoming genuinely useful for contractors, ranchers, municipalities, and buyers working in remote parts of the world. Meanwhile, the rest of the heavy equipment industry kept moving in exactly the opposite direction, toward machines built around electronic control modules, proprietary diagnostic software, and increasingly complex emissions technology designed to meet strict environmental regulations. That shift brought real benefits, cleaner exhaust and better efficiency among them, but it also changed what it meant to own a machine. Diagnosing a problem on a modern engine often required specialized software and factory-authorized tools that an independent mechanic simply didn't have access to. That tension helped fuel a much bigger conversation happening across agriculture and construction, the right to repair debate. Farmers, independent mechanics, and equipment owners argued that buying a machine should come with the practical ability to fix it. Manufacturers pushed back, citing safety, emissions compliance, and protection of their technology. That disagreement eventually worked its way into courtrooms and legislatures, with some of the largest names in agricultural equipment becoming the face of the controversy after years of public pressure. CNC's whole approach lines up naturally with that same idea, even though Clinton never set out to be an activist. He consistently steers customers toward machines they can actually understand and repair themselves, using ordinary tools and basic mechanical knowledge. He isn't out there arguing that modern technology is bad. He simply keeps asking one question: does the added complexity actually benefit the person using the machine? If an older truck can be fixed on the spot with tools already in the toolbox, while a newer one sits parked waiting on a specialized technician, which one is really doing its job? By the time CNC's YouTube audience had grown into the millions of monthly views, most business owners in Clinton's position would have seen an obvious next step: expand. Open new locations. Hire regional managers. Turn a single shop operation into a multi-state dealership network. Inquiries were pouring in from all over the country and increasingly from overseas, since the internet had effectively erased the old geographic limits of a small Indiana equipment yard. For Clinton and his wife Bridget, who has worked alongside him running the business, that kind of momentum wasn't a signal to expand aggressively. It was a signal to slow down and protect what they had already built. A lot of that international demand made perfect sense once you understood who was buying. Customers in remote parts of Africa, Australia, Alaska, and other isolated regions kept coming back to CNC for one simple reason: mechanical simplicity. In places where the nearest dealer might be hundreds of miles away and replacement parts could take weeks to arrive, a rugged, mechanically simple engine was worth more than the latest electronic upgrades. Clinton had spotted that need years before most of the industry caught on, and by the time CNC had built out a modern facility with heavy-duty service bays, reinforced floors, fabrication equipment, and machining capability, the business had every ingredient needed for rapid, large-scale growth. Plenty of companies in that same position have used that kind of momentum to build regional or even national chains. Clinton chose a different path. He has explained his reasoning in pretty direct terms over the years. Growth comes with hidden costs that people tend to overlook. More locations mean more managers. More employees mean more layers of oversight. quality control gets harder to maintain. Decisions that used to happen right there on the shop floor start moving through meetings and management structures instead. Choosing to stay relatively small in an industry where everyone else measures success by how fast they can scale up actually takes more discipline than chasing constant expansion. That decision lets CNC hold on to something a lot of larger operations lose along the way: consistency. Most of the fabrication, rebuilding, welding, and machining still happens under one roof rather than getting farmed out to third-party shops. CNC never lobbied lawmakers or positioned itself as part of any larger movement. It just quietly built an alternative to where the rest of the industry was heading. As modern equipment leaned further into electronic controls, GPS systems, telematics, and manufacturer-locked software, CNC kept doing the opposite, restoring older machines and extending their working lives through careful rebuilding instead of pushing customers toward the newest model on the lot. For contractors, farmers, and buyers working in places where dealer support is thin, that approach meant real independence. What made the whole philosophy land with people, though, was how transparent it stayed the entire time. Year after year of YouTube videos showed inspections, repairs, mistakes, hidden damage, and the tough calls about whether a machine was even worth saving in the first place. The channel turned into something closer to an education than a sales tool, teaching an entire audience how to evaluate machinery for themselves instead of just telling them what to buy. That same straightforward attitude carried over into the local community too, through support for charities, emergency services, and events benefiting kids around Brown County, Indiana. In the end, CNC equipment's biggest asset was never its size. It was the trust it earned, one honest video and one rebuilt truck at a time. While most of the industry chased growth and increasingly sophisticated technology, Clinton and Bridget Chitwood proved there was another way to build a business, through craftsmanship, repairability, honesty, and the kind of customer confidence that no marketing budget can buy.